Hello everyone, welcome to Piano Insights. My name is Clive Swansbourne and today we'll be looking briefly at the fourth Impromptu from Opus 90 by Franz Schubert. I talked at some length about Schubert and about the circumstances of the composition of these pieces in my Piano Insights discussion of the Schubert Impromptu in G flat, number 3 from Opus 90. So rather than repeat all that, I would recommend that you go to hear that video. It's of an absolutely drop-dead gorgeous piece, one of my favorite pieces in the world. So I hope you'll go and look at that one and get a bit more of an idea of what Schubert was under, what pressures he was under in terms particularly of his health while he was writing this late music. I explained how he was only 31 when he died, and he wrote these impromptus during the last few months of his life. Amongst a lot of other pieces, he just was churning out. It was his brain was teeming with ideas that he had to get out within the time that was allotted to him, and he knew that that was limited. He didn't know how limited, but you'll hear more about that in the other video. Now, this piece is also absolutely beautiful piece. When I first heard it, it reminded me of raindrops falling from or trickling water. Absolutely beautiful writing for piano. Dangerous, though, as I shall show. The right-hand figuration is almost entirely based on these broken chords. And with pedal, of course, you get more of an idea of flowing water or maybe fountains or something. It's not an impressionist piece. It's just a series of figurations which, when it comes out beautifully enough, reminds us of something really flowing like water. It's also a very melodic piece. It's hard to call this a melody, really. It's just a series of broken chords. But nonetheless, it seems melodic particularly because the answering phrases, after you have this opening, mysterious. I find them mysterious anyway, these chords. Now, if they're balanced wrongly, they don't have nearly as an effect. So if you were to just bring out the top, I think that's missing some of the mystery. I think it's better to do an octave voicing here. Put the soft pedal down too here. So this is fairly dominant, actually, rather than, which is too pretty. It's not as I say, it's not complex enough. It's kind of a yearning sound, that. Now, technically, the most difficult thing about this piece is the repeated notes coming down. They're really difficult, particularly on a piano which doesn't have a good repeating action. But even on a piano which does have a good repeating action, it's still hard to escape the thumb in time before playing the next one, you see. Sometimes that happens. You don't escape. One doesn't escape the thumb enough to actually repeat that note. Now, action of actually landing and not escaping the next finger. I think it's actually probably easier to do this when you're escaping both fingers. You're playing the finger, escaping it, playing this finger, and escaping both. You can't really escape this one immediately because you're not going to be playing it staccato, you see. So the one you land on has to be a landing rather than an escaping. And I think that's what causes this to be quite difficult, particularly on a piano with not even if it's a pretty good escaping action, which mine is. I still have trouble playing this piece on this piano because it's slightly irregular. I haven't had the action regulated, and that's more typical in piano playing than otherwise. And if you play this piece, it's almost certain that you'll find pianos that you try it out on, which it makes it much more difficult to play this music. So you want to try and adapt to the most sort of piano battle-scarred way of doing it, I guess, so that you can rely on your technique no matter what piano you're playing it on. And even then you can have pianos which are just not going to repeat for you. So sometimes even the greatest pianists, when faced with pianos that are less than stellar, cancel the piece altogether. Claudio Arrau and Michelangelo being the two most famous examples of that, particularly when repeating action is concerned. They'll cancel. So one doesn't have to be too depressed about it, but try to figure out what works best for you. Now, I've found after many years of experience with this piece, the best, I've tried rotation, I've tried a lot of lifting and dropping and so forth, but my two things that I try to remember to do are keep a very close watch on the steps of the arpeggio that I'm actually going to be playing. So if I watch them, that one I watch in advance, watch, watch, watch. Surprisingly, that helps a lot. I've tried rotation, as I say, it doesn't really work. I think because of the different shapes where you land on the white key is not the same. If it were just that, if it were that or something, or if it were all on white keys, it would probably work very well. But because some of them are black and some of the white, it doesn't work really well. The thing that I have found most useful is to just keep an open hand, not a closed hand, not like that, but open hand, fairly flat. Fairly low wrist, with plenty of room for the fingers to escape. And then I get a higher percentage of notes. All of the notes appearing and sounding evenly rather than one or two of them missing, which is always very frustrating in a piece like that because you want this pearlescent texture all the time. Sometimes you'll find pianos which make it absolutely, no matter what technique you use, problem-free. You can do it every time, and the piano just does it for you. But those pianos are very rare, and it's possible also that even though the piano might do that for you, it won't do other things, like it won't give you the voicing you need or give you the color range that you need. So, every piano is different. And I think this piano is wonderful for color range and also for repeated notes in general, but I still find that sometimes it can snarl me up on this piece. So it's actually a good piano to practice it on for that reason, because I'm on my guard. If you're practicing on a piano which has an absolutely, an action which gives you no problems with this piece at all, then you should go and practice on another piano because those pianos are not going to turn up too often, really. Now, we start off with the first, that being quiet, and the next one goes into C flat major, which is the relative major, which to me is a little bit, maybe it should come out a little more. So on the first one, then the next one, maybe lean into it a little bit more, and then the next one. It seems like the top is beginning to dominate here rather than, that doesn't really work anymore. It's coming, this one is a little higher. And the next one is even higher than that. And as you go down, I think, reduce the top on these ones. There are a series of 3 of them now. They're all coming back down, you see. Forte. Finally, we have a forte in this piece. Most of it's been pianissimo. In fact, he hasn't marked anything until here, and it's forte. So prepare for it. Don't suddenly, jar the listener by playing too suddenly. I think you need to prepare. Sort of not pianissimo here anymore. And then full sound on that. No, that's too precious, too pretty. very Schubertian sound actually, where you don't bring out the top. It's just total, it's all about harmony and not melody anymore. As opposed to, which I think is inappropriate. It's not mysterious enough. This is, it's all about the harmonies moving around, you see, and then you move into this much more bright kind of texture here. I didn't play all of the music on page 1, just the chords, but just those are the things which need planning, I think, structurally to make them the most effective. You can play around with the pedal. You don't have to have all of these all pedals. So, for example, yeah, definitely pedal to begin with. But I think that's a good place to take it off, actually. So it dries up a little bit at the end, you see. You don't have to. This is without it. They both work. And I think these ones shouldn't be too short, and they shouldn't be too like that. It's not too melodic. They just come out like these. They're kind of weightless. They have to be weightless, I think. When we get to the part where you have this, there I think you can definitely do it with less pedal, a bit lighter. And then add pedal here when it's up higher. He marks the crescendo there, don't do too much of one. Then we come back to pianissimo here, with the melody in the left hand. So don't really bring out that melody. Crescendo. I think you can also increase the tempo here. I think it's very exciting to do that, because obviously everything is going up in terms of the crescendo, and also shifting up from here to here. He's shifting gradually up to there, you see. Now here, I think you can accent the first beat, the first note of each beat, rather than. No. You get a feeling of tumbling. Like everything's sort of just tumbled and crashed. How to, and this is just sort of the whirling, maybe they crashed into a lake or something. There's all the swirling waters. Absolutely Schubertian melody there, which comes out of all this disaster, you see. It just emerges like a flower, you know? Take your time. Very tender music. And then we're back to that. And the second time we get this, it's in A flat major. For the second part of this piece, the B section, the middle section. Now, the main thing about this piece is make the chords absolutely as quiet as you can, but with every note sounding. That's the hard part here. So these, particularly down here, don't lift the fingers up. If you start doing this, they'll be instantly too loud. Hold on to, see if you can get good at just not lifting all the way up even, and then you'll get the sound you want, you see. That's what you want. Very light. And so this isn't too loud. It has to be quite quiet, this, but it's easily going to be dominated by this if you're not careful. So this is the most important thing to practice here, making sure that these are even and they're always the same. They always sound the same, even, so that you're not sort of doing different things with your hands. You're just allowing the arm like to pulley up and then drop, and pulley up and then drop. The same amount every time, you see. Make sure that you always get that shaping, you see. Even with all this thickness, you've still got to get this in. That sad kind of phrasing. And then it starts coming to life here. Temper tantrum, if you like to call it that. Certainly an emotional a mini emotional outburst, which will be magnified later in the next page. And let's skip the repeat and go to this part. I find this a spectacularly beautiful part of the piece. We've had all this tremendous emotional turmoil. And so on. So I've heard many performances of this, and I don't really find that most people take the opportunity that Schubert gives us to be like an oasis of calm here, a magnificent oasis of calm for what? 6 measures, well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 measures. 8 measures of beautiful calm, ending here. In C sharp major, and then the storm starts brewing again. But it can be much quieter and it can be much slower, and you can really slow down into it too. I mean, not much slower, it's actually fairly subtle, but it's a little slower than this. It doesn't have to be the same speed, is my point. And I think that's the case with Schubert's piece in general. I'm Schubert's music, of course, or indeed you could say romantic music and much classical music also. It doesn't have to be the same speed all the time, and particularly moving into the romantic period, which this is. This is a sort of a hybrid of classic and romantic styles, but there's a lot of romanticism, particularly in this part, and this section here is much more romantic in flavour than classical. And even if it weren't, I would do it that way. I mean, early Beethoven pieces, there are places like this where there are just oases of calm, where you really want to take more time, and Beethoven would have done that too. There are many reports of that. We don't have reports of Schubert performing, because he didn't really perform except in his house at his Schubert Abenden, the Schubert Abend, which is Schubert evenings, where he invited all his friends to come to concerts at people's houses and enjoy mostly his songs and his duets. He didn't like performing solo. He must have been a pretty good pianist, though, even to do his accompaniments and his duets. But he didn't own a piano. That's another thing which is absolutely astonishing about Schubert. He used to borrow other people's pianos in their houses. Like a doctor friend of his said, if you want to practice on my piano, Schubert, you better check my window. If the curtain is closed, that means I'm in. If the curtain's open, I'm out. You can come in and practice the piano. So he did most of his composition at a desk, no piano. Okay, so that's pretty much it for this piece. I don't think I have that much more to say. So I thank you very much for listening, and I hope to see you in future videos. Please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.